you will have to pay particular attention. So lean in. It's a very, very important conversation that we all need to have together. So I'll frame this for you. Some months ago was International Holocaust Remembrance Day. Sadhvi sent out a notice, a very inclusive and conscious communication about how on this day of all days, how important it is that we recognize our oneness and our connectedness. A really beautiful message of love and togetherness. Very measured, very conscious. And this communication was met with incredible negativity, even violence in communication. And this was a tremendous awakening for Sadhvi, who had not experienced this level of vitriol before through social media. It was such an awakening for her that she decided to try to answer the communications that were coming in from these people, which was, I would say, a terrible mistake. And it brought up for Sadhvi, I'll let her speak about it in a moment, it brought up a very serious concern about where we've come to. The feeling is, and I'm hearing this from people from many, many countries across the world, certainly in the United States, the feeling is that people feel like they've woken up in a world that they no longer understand. It is as if the rules have somehow changed, that the energy has somehow changed. Something's different, and it's frightening. And in the reactivity to fear, one of the things we notice is this incredible divide. People are taking sides, going into camps, and seem more concerned about being right and proving the other wrong, maintaining a sense of separation, than connecting, unifying, coming to greater depths of understanding. So this session is dedicated to the idea that if our community can't bring people together, who's going to do it? Are we going to wait for our governments to do it, our political leaders, or anyone else, any other group of people? If we are dedicated to the word yoga or union, and our entire life is dedicated to bringing things together, if not us, who? So this brings up the big question. How can we bridge the divide that seems to exist here? So I'd like to begin with Sadhvi, Sadhviji, Pujya Sadhviji. And I'd like to ask, in the aftermath of this revelation and your inspiration to create this session, I'd like to ask about how you feel the world has shifted and what you feel people might be experiencing that can begin to explain the divide and people's negativity, even their violence, in the way that you recently experienced.
Thank you so much, Tommy. And yeah, this particular session is actually a very important one to me. It's one that I got personally involved in and personally curated to make sure that we had voices to speak to that divide and to make sure that we had this panel, because as Tommy shared about the recent experience, it was only the latest in a series of experiences I've had over the last few years. As most of you know, I come originally from America, from Los Angeles. Spent the first 25 years of my life there. I've now been here for the last 27 plus years. And going back to America always has its own set of unique opportunities, shall we say. And yet, over the last few years, something really interesting and troubling I have started to notice, which is there's a term in Hindi that I really love called San Shakti. Shakti is power. And it's the power to tolerate, the power to sit with. And that power, that ability seems to be dissipating very, very, very rapidly in people I love, communities I love, in America particularly, but I think it's probably spread throughout the West. But I've been noticing it especially in the US. And this is amongst communities that are yogic, that are spiritual communities. I mean, I'm not hanging out at, NRA conventions or bars or clubs. I mean, this is amongst yoga communities, amongst spiritual communities, amongst people who are committed to consciousness. The ability to sit with, open to, tolerate even, ideally eventually accept, but even let's begin with tolerate, differences of opinions, with compassion, with love, with embrace of someone's own right to have a different opinion, seems to be disappearing. And it's been going on for the last many years, but it seems like it's getting worse. And whether it's aspects of COVID being real, not real, manufactured, non-manufactured, vaccines, something to take, not to take, whether it's political parties, whether it's what's happening in the Middle East, whatever it may be, it really feels like everything that's happening in the world is just yet another opportunity for us to divide ourselves further. And my dad is a divorce lawyer and has spent his entire life divorcing people. And I mention this because he's also one of the wisest, amazing men in the world. Those of you who know him, I know would agree. And from my youth, I remember him teaching something very powerful. As friends of mine would get married, as children of his friends would get married, as anybody would come to him for advice, he had one teaching that to me is really the root of the problem and solution. And the teaching is, you can either be right or you can be married. And that's a choice we all have to make. And it was always his big advice when couples would get married is you need to decide, do you want to be married or do you want to be right? And if you want to be married, you've been right for the last time in your life. And on a deep level, it's such a powerful teaching, because whether we're looking at one person we call our spouse, our husband, our wife, our partner, or we're looking at this marriage of us in community, in the world, we've let go of the commitment to being in love and to being one in favor of being right. And we're losing the ability to love people who think differently than we do. And the other piece that's also deeply troubling to me, and that goes with this, as Tommy was mentioning this post that I had put up thinking it was simply a call to oneness and unity and togetherness and love and harmony, and ended up being quite a wake-up call. And I ended up getting texts and phone calls from people saying, have you seen the comments on your Instagram post? And I went in and, as he explained, made the mistake of thinking that if I just responded, that people were really looking for answers rather than simply looking for a platform to vent. And so I went in and thought, well, let me answer. And it became very clear very quickly that actually all they were looking for was an avenue to essentially shout into space. And that's the other part that really, on a deep spiritual and also psychological level, troubles me, is the degree to which we all have started to feel like the injured party. Someone actually had written, your post has re-traumatized me. And as someone who on a personal level in childhood experienced severe trauma of sexual abuse, of abandonment, like, I'm really open to and wanting to make sure that my presence on earth brings healing, not hurt. I know all too well and all too personally the ramifications of trauma in our lives. And I thought, wait, this is a call to oneness and love and union. What in this is traumatizing? And as we spoke about it, we realized that there's almost an epidemic, you could say, of people identifying as traumatized, and it turning our focus so inward, but not inward the way that we usually speak about it spiritually, but inward in terms of my injuries, me as the injured party, you having been the one through your words, your point of view, your sheer existence on planet Earth, your sexual orientation, your color, your race, the clothes you're wearing, how you vote, have injured me. And there's an all about me-ness that I think is really a major stumbling block to spiritual growth. And so I'm so happy to be with all of these beloved, dear, dear friends and our community, our Sangha, and to really talk about how we can bring some healing to this, because political leaders are not going to do it. People with an agenda are not going to do it. And lastly, what we noticed in the comments that were coming on at least my post, and what I've heard from others is really the sad norm, is that so many of them are actually from within the yoga community. 100% of the negativity, hatred, vitriol that came onto my page was not actually from religious extremists that I had originally assumed it must have been. It was from white American yoga doers. And that, first I was just really curious and interested by that, and then I became really sad by that. And so I feel a great responsibility, a great opportunity, a great blessing, and also a great responsibility to be part of a solution together.
In an effort to bring a greater awareness to this challenge, I spent a lot of last night thinking about the playing field that we're all on right now. And it seems relevant to bring up, it seems relevant to look at the characteristics of this playing field. In this case, the playing field I'm speaking of is social media. In the 1960s, there was an American writer and philosopher named Marshall McLuhan. And he had a very famous statement he made. He said, "The medium is the message." And what he meant by that was that at the time he was speaking about television, the power of television as a medium itself to influence people. Never mind the content that was showing up on the television, but that the medium itself was going to have a powerful influence on people. And the great example of this that we use in American history was a presidential debate that took place between John F. Kennedy and Richard Nixon. All the people that watched that debate on television remarked how handsome John F. Kennedy was, how healthy he looked, how young, and how terrible Richard Nixon looked. And so most of the people that ended up watching that broadcast on TV ended up voting for John F. Kennedy. That's an example of the medium itself being a powerful, influential factor. So I want to bring that forward now to now. And I'd like to have commentary from Anand, if he were willing. What are we seeing as the characteristics of this particular medium? How does the medium of social media, never mind what people are saying back and forth, but the characteristics of the medium itself, because we want to understand how this divide has taken place, and we want to know where we can fight a good fight a fair fight the right fight. And so Anandji, if you wouldn't mind, I'd like to ask for you to comment on the playing field itself, on the medium itself.
Thank you, Tommy. Thank you, Sadhviji, for your beautiful words. Yeah, I think as we go into this whole display of humanity's insanity on the digital platforms, we have to be incredibly aware that the analog reality is the primary reality. And we should not lose sight of that, because that's one of the biggest dangers of our time, is that we are giving up our humanity, giving up our nature, our fundamental existence to a fabricated universe, whether we call it social media, and now even outsourcing our intelligence to AI, and people freaking out if we will be human anymore. We will be able to, what does it even mean to be human? And so I think it's of great importance that as we, are in these times where the use of social media is only going to increase, it's not going to go down. We are in that age. And because of the short form content and how it really plays on the addictive tendencies within the human psyche, it's now it's the greatest addiction right now, right? Because it's portable. You can be in the bathroom and feed your addiction. You can be in your bed and feed your addiction. You get up and you feed your addiction. So you're constantly in that addictive loop where you are no more aware of who you are. So you're constantly being externally influenced by all kinds of data. And now with the propaganda machines, you are being told who to demonize, and you're just trying to find your sense of self by identifying with certain ideology, with certain virtue signaling, with, okay, who do we demonize now, right? So why didn't you change your flag to Ukraine flag when that thing happened, right? So let's demonize those people. So we are constantly being told who to demonize. So if you live in that unnatural field, then you become really unnatural. You become what in yoga we call pisach, somebody who doesn't really have a body, who is not fundamentally grounded in nature, who lives in head, constantly tormented by fundamental existence. And so if we really want to bring this to our communities and we want to find solution, we need to first take charge of our attention and learn to move it away from social media. We are in a world where it has taken, in a very short time, front seat. Even with young people who are going for a job, they're looking at their profiles, how many followers you have, it's really going insane. And so if we really start to give it such high value, then we will not be able to have conversations, meaningful conversations, because that's not what the platform is ultimately designed for. You can hide behind a screen and you don't see an individual you're writing to. The things people say on these platforms, to these unkind things and extremely violent things to each other, they would not say that if they were in front of the person. So because it's one step removed. So we need to, as a beginning of the solution, has to that we personally bring it in our life, where our value system getting subjugated to social media and its popularity and what all one does there. Is our fundamental values outside of it? And are we able to exist in a sane manner and bring this to our communities and in our lives, where our true values are not what's happening in the digital landscape, but what's happening in the analog reality. When we can really tend to that and lead from the heart there and really create an environment of kindness and really realize that we are here to learn, not to be right. Because in the world, my master always said, there is no right or wrong. There is only right. And that's why there is a fight. If there was right and wrong, there would not be a fight. There would be possibility of learning. So only right people, as you were saying, your father told you, only right people fight. And so my guru always told me, don't ever try to be right. Only be interested in being wise and learn. And so my invitation and how I see the digital landscape, the moment it starts to dominate, it becomes the primary way of relating and creating value around individual or an organization. It's not a healthy trend. And we need to claim our power to our humanity. It is very, very important time because of how quickly the digital environment is evolving. And our nervous systems are not able to keep up with it.
Seane, you are an activist. And in a time like this brings up, inherently, there are going to be some complexities that you have to navigate. When do we speak up? How do we hold, as a yoga teacher, the space for all? Where is our responsibility? When do we need to take a stand or make a decision, this isn't the moment? As an activist, a lifelong activist, I'd like to hear from you on this point.
I'm so grateful for the opportunity to be in this dialogue, especially with dear friends, after all these many years. And yes, I have been deeply committed to social justice work in my community and trying to bridge the gap between yoga and social justice for many years, and have taken my fair share of rightful slings and arrows and hits along the way as I learned and growed and developed in my own awareness about justice and privilege. And my commitment to it was because there were two things that were given to me that I held very closely within my heart. One was that our liberation is bound, and that we have a moral responsibility to be in service to the whole. That none of us are free. We cannot have that assumption that just because we're doing the work and we're okay, we have to actively make sure that all beings are free. And obviously it's a lofty ideal, it's a lot of work, but to me that's one of the most important tenets of yoga, is karma yoga, is being in service, is speaking truth to power. The other piece, sorry, I just lost my train of thought. There were two pieces. Liberation is bound. It'll come back around to me.
Responsibility.
No, I'll get to that. My point being is that ahimsa. Ahimsa. But it might not be the ahimsa you understand it to be. I was taught for the longest time as ahimsa is do no harm. But someone had shared with me that it's not just do no harm. You also have to recognize that passivity can cause harm to others. And that by avoiding turning your back to the suffering of others means that you can be complicit in that pain and that suffering. And so once again, I can't speak for anyone else, but the spiritual practice that I was committed to, as much as this body did not want to turn towards that pain and suffering, my silence caused ahimsa. My denial of racism, of sexism, of homophobia, of transphobia, of ageism, of ableism caused harm. And someone who looks like me, a white, able-bodied person with socioeconomic status, with education, it's easy to turn my back on that suffering because it doesn't directly impact me. But then I'm complicit. And so I struggle with that. And so for me, it was getting awareness and also choosing to push back at, hopefully in a loving way, to fellow yogis, to get them to engage, to get them to look at the belief systems that they internalize, whether conscious of it or not, because it's in our education, it's in our religion, it's in our cultures, and seeing the ways in which they perpetuated separation based on their action or their inaction. And so these are the things that motivated a lot of the choices that I made over the years. And when social media happened, I took my hits, but I could handle it. It's uncomfortable when you have to face your own shadow self. You don't want to think of yourself being any other way than righteous. But I have to say that, and I don't have an answer to any of this, just by the way, I am deep in this inquiry as someone who is committed to social justice and want to run from social media with everything that I have, The amount of violence, sexual violent messages that I receive, especially since the pandemic, caused me to have to get cameras all over my house, caused all sorts of things to have to happen because of the threat to my own personal safety, just because I acknowledge certain things that to me were real low-hanging fruit. And to Sadhvi's point, it wasn't really bots that were responding as far as I know. It was friends and it was people within the yoga community. But recently I posted something, it said ceasefire now and bring the hostages home. The two are not incongruent. And I had to turn off my comments. That took me about 3 weeks to come up with that little phrase because I labored over every single word. In those 3 weeks, I didn't want to, thank you. Well, in those 3 weeks, I didn't want to post. I talked myself out of it. I don't need this. I'm too tired. I'm just going to get bots responding anyway. I don't want to not like my friends anymore. And that little voice in my head said, our liberation is bound, that if you don't speak this truth to power and provide languaging for other perhaps young teachers who are afraid to take a stand, they're looking to us for leadership. How do we, and again, I'm in the inquiry, I recognize that every time I post, I contribute to a divide. But every time I don't post, I contribute to ahimsa. I recognize that there is a deep psychological resonance. People are outraged, they are triggered. I do believe on a cultural level, we are traumatized and it's being excavated from the bowels of our society in the United States because we never dealt with the mass slaughter of Native American Indians. We are literally on top of a sacred grave, and we think we're gonna be able to deal with the power dynamics that exist today. We haven't reconciled any of it. So what happens when someone posts something and someone gets triggered and doesn't have skills? They react, and in that split second, they actually feel better. The serotonin levels rise, they feel better, they feel like they've done something. I know for myself, I am gonna commit to showing up and teaching trauma-informed work, helping people learn how to self-regulate their nervous system, invite them into accountability and self-responsibility to the ways in which they create separation and division or the ways they heal that divide. It doesn't mean you lose your voice. Doesn't mean you don't speak truth to power. I don't yet know how to do this. I don't. I work hard at this. But as someone who believes in justice and equality and freedom and fairness and liberation, peace, love for all, it can't be done through the lens of spiritual bypass or my own lack of accountability. I'm still in that fire and I'm still contributing to it. So I feel that as awful as this moment is, and it is, it's uncomfortable and awful. If we continue to step into leadership, take accountability, take responsibility, find the languaging, invite other people into a process, teach them how not to operate from a place of contempt, with compassion, maybe we can move through this moment, this learning, as you said, Anand, and find a new way. Social media is going nowhere, and as dark as it is as light as it can go. And so if I check out because of the darkness, then I'm also gonna check out because of the lightness, and I refuse to do that. So again, I offer you nothing except stay the course, do your work, breathe deep, see a bigger spiritual picture to why things are happening as they do, check your own privilege, recognize that silence is complicity, see what your own nervous system can tolerate, and then speak anyway. But speak with compassion, empathy, love, and a deep kindness for the perceived other.
My next question is for Kia, and then I'll be coming to Gurmukh Ji. So, Kia, I have the great good fortune of living with you, and I've seen your effort over the last 5 years. If I had to characterize it, I would say you have truly turned your gaze inward and dedicated yourself to developing the meditative mind and the meditative mindset. And I was wondering if you would speak to your findings on that path, this last 5 years in particular, as we're speaking about this, the challenges of this time, and how important you feel meditation is, and where that falls in the, well, where that becomes a necessity at times like these.
Thank you, Tomi, and thank you, Sadhvi Ji, Anand Ji, Sean, for everything that you shared. Oh, I feel a lot of energy running through me right now. Do you guys feel some of that too, just around the immediacy of this topic that is so relevant to all of us? And we'll all be processing in our own way what we're hearing, and where what's landing and how it's landing within us. And what I've learned in the last few years as I've gone deeply within is that everything that I think is about somebody else is about me. And that's a 100% deal. Everything I think is about somebody else is about me. And what I've learned is if I don't take the time to go inward to really understand something with my own direct experience and deep consideration, all I can ever do is react and create more drama in the field. And so we're in this information age. There's so much information, and I think part of the challenge for all of us is what information about issues do we trust? And without a meditative mind, without a connection to our own intuitive knowing power, how can we know when we're reacting to something if we're reacting from our own unprocessed trauma, ancestral trauma, or if we're acting in a way that is coming from wholeness? There's that beautiful verse, Purnamida Purnamidam Purnat Purnamadachate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnamivavashishate. To me, that verse speaks to each and every one of our capacity to take actions that are rooted in wholeness. If we take an action that's rooted in wholeness, what comes from that action is wholeness. And nothing is taken from the wholeness. So we start to, what I feel is, live in a different paradigm when we start to take full, radical self-responsibility and are willing to do the work of self-investigation before reacting to circumstances in life. And then whatever is coming from us is going to have it's going to be a seed of our own wholeness, and is going to contribute to a new way of being. And it feels to me like a new paradigm, as Reverend Michael Beckwith, who has been here in past years, speaks to. A new paradigm is being born, and it's a rocky road right now to that. Old ideas are not going to serve this time, and if we look back at history and we see that history just keeps repeating itself, then we need to find new ways. And in my experience, those new ways come from our experience of wholeness. They come from our intuitive mind, where we feel divinely connected. And what I also observe is that when we come together in gatherings like this, and we are so richly connected through the field, that of course we want to love and support each other. Of course we'll take the time to sit and listen to each other and be able to hold space for other people's ideas. But when we're feeling stressed and isolated, we look at other people as a threat. We look at them as competition. We're trying to survive. The hormones that are going through our body are directing us to narrow our focus, tend to matter, what's going to work for me in this moment, and then that creates the separation. So in my investigation in these last years, I just come to understand that we're each in Pandit Rajwani Tiganite's words, we're each islands of excellence. And it takes learning to consciously work with our mind, consciously work with our conditioning and the hurts and traumas of the past without overly identifying with them, to really get to know who we are, and then perhaps we'll know where we stand. And on the more immediate issues, as Sean speaks to, I think that's such an individual thing as to how we feel or when we feel that we could stand up publicly to say things. And I really, last thing is I really recognize that the work that we do on an individual level is impacting the whole. Every action you take towards self-liberation is impacting the whole. Every time you choose to stay in love rather than fear is impacting the whole. That's my form of activism, to go to that space and place.
Gurmukhji, you have been teaching Kundalini Yoga now for 54 years. You teach all over the world. You have taught in Russia. You have taught in various parts of what used to be the Soviet Union. You have taught North America, South America, Europe. You've taught in India. You've run trainings all over the world in this yoga of awareness. And I'm wondering if you could reflect on your decades of experience of the changing awareness of people. Sometimes we say the more things change, the more they stay the same. I'm wondering what you're seeing as you train people still all over the world in these different countries, in different situations.
That's a big question. Maybe just to give you a bit of my background so that you can understand that I don't understand exactly what's going on now. But in a way, I don't really care. I know that sounds kind of weird, like, what is she anyway? 54 years of this stuff and she doesn't care. I care so much. When I was a child, we didn't have running water. I was born in the Midwest. Of course, we didn't have telephones. We didn't have televisions, born in 1943. They came along. But my mother was from Sicily, Italy. And she was from what they called in those days the old country. And everyone made fun of us in the USA that we were from the old country. Now it's so cool to be from Sicily or Paris, or, oh, they're from Paris, they're from here, there. But at the time, if you weren't just white, come over on the Mayflower, then you were from the old country. And we also lived on the wrong side of the tracks. Do you know what that is? The poor side of the tracks, because we didn't have very much money. And I had the best childhood of my life. I didn't come in with major injuries or traumas like so many people. And there weren't psychiatrists and there weren't medicine you could take if you got diagnosed with something. It was an incredible time to be alive. Because we didn't have much money, we had to get very creative. When birthdays came and Christmases came and holidays came, and we'd have circuses in the barn, and I'd have these competitive barefoot races on stones, and because there were all stones in the road, I always won, by the way. But I had an incredible childhood. I think I did. But maybe I just left all the bad stuff out. I don't know. But I just wanted to say that my mother was, God bless her soul, she'd be like 150 years old now or something like that. She She had a little bowl that she had brought from Sicily, and there were 4 kids. And of course, 4 kids, 2 years apart, 2 boys, 2 girls. You fight. You have fights and arguments and all of that. And she had a bowl in this little humble cabinet. And we could hear her when she was going to the bowl. And she'd open up the glass. We knew what was going to come next. It was a little bowl like this. And on the side it said, if you can't say anything nice, don't see anything at all. And she'd hand us the bowl. And there we were, frozen, these 4 kids that just wanted to rah, 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 like that. But I never forgot that. And I have remembered so many things as a child and did so many crazy things in my life. Took more LSD than probably all of you combined. That I took so much I didn't even know I was on it or not. Did I take LSD today? No, I was a wackadoodle. I was a real wackadoodle. But I wanted to know God. I wasn't taking it for entertainment. I wasn't taking it. I would fast, take it because I wanted to know God. And if I didn't know God, I didn't want to be alive. And that's what it got down to. I never did yoga. I never did meditation. Those words, people didn't know the difference between yoga and yogurt. It did not exist. Yogurt didn't exist either. But anyways, I believe in destiny, and you all have great destinies. Otherwise, you would not be sitting here on the banks of the Ganga. It almost makes me want to cry. You have been chosen. I don't like that word, you're the chosen ones, because I think that's kind of bullshit. You just came. It was your calling. You heard it. You came. Some of you are still searching. I understand. Some of you are more evolved and have done more of the work to know you're in the right place at the right time. And now our duty. The Aquarian age came 2012. We thought that the skies are going to open and peace and love would come and the whole world would walk as Jesus walked. Well, this is the storm right now. That was 12 years ago. This is the time we must go through. There's really nothing wrong. Everything's right now. Media is insane. You can't trust anybody. People lie all the time. It's a norm to lie. Did you know that? If you're not lying, you're not being. That's why every social media, you don't know anything, and everybody's busy trying to know about everybody else. I don't even know how to use a computer, and I'm not embarrassed. I've got my husband. He doesn't. Secondly, all that social media stuff, I know I'm on it, but there's a beautiful gal we've got, Das Padmani in San Diego. People send photos to her, she puts it up, she puts a little saying, it's so cute. So people say, were you on with this? And the likes, I have never in my life thought something would come to this. The likes, that is so much. The likes, you get 60 likes or 60,000 likes, or you don't get any likes. Well, then I'm something. Oh, I've got to be something. You go back and forth with these likes. Who cares who likes you? I mean, you don't even know them anyway. I'm telling you, this country, this world has gone nutso, but people want to connect. Basic things. People want to love, and they want to be loved. It's so simple. And if you, as yogis and yoginis and teachers, take it down to some basic principles. I remember when our teacher, Yogi Bhajan, no one came to his first class. You know what he did? He taught it anyway. And I've gone through the periods of how many people are in class and all this stuff when we had Golden Bridges in New York and LA and everything. At my age, at 80, going on 82, Swamiji said 84. That was cute, but the point is, start not caring about if people like you or they don't like you or how many, what do you call it, hits you get on your social media and, all this stuff. People just are there on the bridge with that thing filming themselves. Everyone's filming themselves. Like, what has everything come to? We're like parrots. So, when you go back to wherever you go back, if you don't know how to pray, learn how to pray now. If you don't know how to meditate, contemplate getting up before the sun comes up. That was one of our basis teaches. We get up 3, 2, 4 in the morning, but we get up there to say to the sun, thank you. Thank you for coming up again for us. Because we're such naughty little nuts down here. You can learn so much from the animals. You want to learn a lot here in Rishikesh? We have a big story about the gray monkeys. I won't go into it. When they used to live way up, they never came down. And then they saw the red butt monkeys, and they were getting everything from the tourists and eating garbage. So now they're down, but they've still kept their gentleness. And I bought 3 boxes of popcorn to go across the bridge to share with people, but they ended up eating them all. They took the box, they're feeding them to their babies. It's time to just wake up, be here, be thankful, get up every morning. I have an older friend at the Golden Temple, and she said one day to me last year, she says, every day, she's not a yogi, she's just a kind, nice person, and my feet touch the ground on the floor, I say, thank you, God, for another day. If your lives are all complicated, say to yourself, how can I make them more simple? How can I slow down? How can I see what's around me? And what will happen to you? People will start noticing. If you're at the airport, if you're walking in your town, your city, any place in the world, they'll come to you or they'll watch you. And they might have time to talk. Say, you seem so calm. What do you do? And then at that point you can say, well, whatever you do. I do yoga or I pray. And if you have an opportunity to tell people, giving them left nostril breathing, like on the airplane. I'll end with one more story of how just little teeny things. We were checking in at where they check all your stuff to see who you are and everything at the airport. There was a day you didn't have to do that stuff, you know. And this lady, she was a woman of color, and she looked very tired. And I think it was the end of her shift in some airport, someplace in the world. And she was checking all wherever they check the passports and everything. And I said, thank you, God bless you. Well, she looked up, I'll never forget this. She took her glasses off, she had tears in her eyes, and she says, thank you. I needed to hear that. We never know how much we touch people. Just passing them, smiling, and if you can afford to hug, like I've been hugging all week, just little things. Start with little things. And perhaps in the morning just say thank you for this day, and how may I serve? How may I serve? And the whole life will change.
So I've been working with this phrase, sphere of influence. I find that if you wanted to take on every cause in the world, your life will end in paralysis. Right then and there's just too much. So I'm working with this phrase, sphere of influence, to try to understand where mine is. I've heard Anandji speak about the relevant call. You know, if animal activism is your thing, that's relevant for you. You might decide to put some of your energy there because it's relevant, it's important, it's real for you. People say to me, you know, what do you feel about the Middle East, or what do you feel about Ukraine? Well, I feel sad, of course. And then there's that push to, well, you know, take a side. I want to know what you believe about this. I believe people are suffering. And they're like, well, you should be outraged. I've had people tell me. You should be outraged. I say, no, I'll leave the outrage to you. I'd rather not lose my transparency of mind. What is in my sphere of influence? What is in your sphere of influence? Where can you make a difference? When I think about Syrian refugees, or I think about Palestinian refugees, or I think about Ukrainian or Russian or anyone from any side, I don't know that those things are immediately within my sphere of influence, but it brings a really important conversation to bear. For each of us have to figure out what is within our sphere of influence, what is appropriate, responsible, what do we need to take on, and what would be inappropriate or unrealistic to take on because it's outside of our sphere of influence. It's not something we could do something about. So I'd like to hear from everybody on this topic. Sadhvi, I could begin with you, Sadhvi ji.
It's such a wonderful question, and just first of all, so thank you so much for such beautiful, beautiful teachings and wisdom from everybody, and such a joy to be together here in community. Tommy, I think you've raised such an important point, because when we shout into essentially what is a black hole of social media, this outrage. As Sean was speaking about the neurochemical high, the rush that we get, the hit that we get in that moment. We also get something that to me is a bit more insidious, which is we get the idea that we have done something, that we have somehow been part of a solution. I posted something, I commented on it, I liked it, therefore, I am working for peace. And I think that not only does that which is happening on social media fuel the divide, but I think it also lulls us into a very false and very detrimental illusion that we are actually being part of a solution. And therefore, I don't need to do anything else because I've already posted on Facebook about it. All of the time and energy that I needed to dedicate to my pain, my sadness, my fear, my outrage about what is happening, I have put it into this post. I'm now done. Let's go for Chinese food. Social activism, check. Done. And the truth really is that we all have different spheres of influence. We all have different impacts. We all have different skills. We all have different abilities. But one thing is true for all of us, which is we have a huge potential to actually bring about peace in this world. Now, we may not have the potential to change the way that leaders of different countries are behaving, but those aren't the only place that there's violence and war and division and suffering and pain going on in the world. There's human rights abuses taking place every time women in their home are battered, or children are abused, or anybody sleeps hungry, or anyone doesn't have access to water, or to a toilet, or to school, or to primary medical care. There is no reason for women to die in childbirth anymore. There is no reason for people to sleep hungry. I mean, wherever we live, if the extent of our sphere of influence is that we're able to make sandwiches or burritos and go out and bring them once a week or 3 times a week to feed the hungry people in our city, do it. Put down the phone, get off the social media, because A, it's just taking up your time, and B, it's making you feel like you've already done your work. Feed the people near you. Yes, tragically, children are suffering in Gaza, in Israel, in Ukraine, in Sudan, in Myanmar, in so many parts of the world. And if you don't have a direct link to help them, turn to where you do have a direct link. Because the kids in your city who are starving are no less deserving of your love and your help than the children who are starving someplace else. And so I think it's important to recognize, as you say, what is my sphere of influence, and to use it. Do you have a little bit of disposable income? Great. Use it. Make sandwiches, make burritos, buy blankets, go out and give them to people living on the street where it's cold where you live. Plant trees. Do whatever you can do to share that. I wanted also just quickly to respond for a moment on a different subject, but one that felt really important regarding the social media conversation, as Anandji was speaking about the level of attention and distraction. Because not only is it stealing, quite literally, the minutes and moments of our lives, not only is it preventing us then from putting those minutes and moments elsewhere to things that actually bring happiness, like being with real people we love, but it actually does something else that prevents us from solving the real problems that we do face in the world. I recently read about a study that I wanted to share with you, and the study is that we're now at a position where in the average American office, and I believe this is probably true in most of the world, although the study was done in America, the average amount of time that each worker is able to work before being interrupted is 3 minutes. If you work in an average American work environment, you are interrupted every 3 minutes, whether it's by your device, binging, bleeping, buzzing, vibrating, ringing, etc., whether it's from an incoming email, whether it's from a phone call, whether it's from a colleague leaning over your cubicle. Now, as sad as that may sound, it gets worse. During the course of 1 hour, 1 hour of work being interrupted every 3 minutes, your IQ points drop 10 points in that hour. You're literally 10 IQ points stupider at the end of the hour than you were at the beginning of the hour. Now, just for comparison's sake, if you sat at your desk for an hour and you did no work, but you simply smoked marijuana for an hour, your IQ would drop by about 5 points during the course of the hour, which means that our current way of living and working is making us stupider than if we actually just sat and got high all day long. And what that means is that we are handicapping ourselves from actually being able to address the very real situations in our own internal lives. Sean spoke so beautifully about this collective trauma that people have, that which we're dealing with. Kia spoke about the importance of going within. But if I can't focus, if I can't pay attention, long enough to have an actual conversation, long enough to meditate, long enough to go in, long enough to introspect, to contemplate, long enough to be with people I really actually like or even love, long enough to solve what we're facing, we're going to get nowhere. And so if you needed yet another reason to stop being a slave to an algorithm, it is in service of everything that you individually and we collectively need to do for anything that matters to you in the world. Your own awakening, your own enlightenment, world peace, ending world hunger, climate change. It doesn't matter. Whatever it is that may matter to you, one thing is for sure. If you can't pay attention, it's not going to happen. And so we really need to reclaim that freedom and that autonomy and that agency and that power. We're all screaming about my right, my right. Well, what about my right to pay attention? What about my right to actually focus on that which I want to be focused on? And so as we're here, I think a really important takeaway is the reclaiming of our time, attention, intention, so that we can put it toward whatever our dharma may be. Our collective dharma, of course, to awakening and realization, but also our individual dharma here in these beautiful, beautiful human bodies.
That'd be great.
Oh, so me? Or
Make your way down.
really everything that Sadhviji said mirrors what I believe deep within my soul about what conscious engagement looks like, and that it has to be relevant to each soul based on their own dharma and their own capacity to hold the challenges of others. My experience as someone who has been in the field, if I had to name one thing that was probably I was most passionate about, my nervous system does something that it doesn't do anywhere else. I shake, I cry, and then it becomes about me. And I've learned over the years, because Lord knows I've tried, that the best way in which I can serve something that I'm so passionate about is by funding others who have that capacity within their nervous system and who can do the work that I wish I can do, but I cannot. But what I can contribute is funding. In the same way, for whatever reason, over the years, my work has taken me to work with children who have been severely sexually abused, and I have been in environments all over the world, in brothels, and have spoken with pimps and madams and had to see the onslaught of what that level of abuse looks like. Something about my nervous system allows me to hold that space. I process it later, but in the moment, I feel very calm, present, not neutral. You can't be neutral in the face of abuse, but for some reason, my nervous system can do that. Therefore, better me be in that environment than someone else who can't. And what do? I rely on the funding of others. That's their contribution. My contribution is no greater than theirs, and vice versa. It's all of us serving the whole in whatever ways we can. If you're raising your family, if you're going back to school, if you're in financial hardship, it's probably not a good idea to get on a plane and abandon your own children so that you can serve the populations in the world. Your deepest service might be making sure that you raise really integrated children so that they don't continue to contribute to the pain and suffering that exists within the world. Knowing then that your role within influence changes in time as you grow. I think, though, for me, one of the biggest shadows that I've experienced as an activist and within the yoga community, besides spiritual bypass, is apathy. And that is something that is a difference. Apathy is the direct, I don't experience myself in you. Your experience has nothing to do with me. And because they're not directly impacted, their heart is completely not open to that level of suffering. That is the thing that, as a sphere of influence, that doesn't cost any more money, that doesn't take any more time, that won't particularly impact your nervous system in a negative way, is to really help people to recognize and understand that we are all connected, we are all one, that I can't be free unless we're all free, and that each of us are privileged enough to contribute to the healing of this planet in our own unique way, and it's something we get to do. When most of the people in the world, because of oppression and violence and war, illiteracy, lack of opportunity, are just trying to survive. And so the more we have, I believe, the more, we need to do our deep inner work so that we can stay in compassion and stay really present to the suffering in the world without going into denial, and then reach when others would reject, embrace when others might deny. To me, that's what the practice of yoga is all about. And in doing so, you're gonna be confronted with your own discomfort and entitlement and your own shadows, and that's just yoga. It's just one more teaching that is saying to us, can you love now? Can you love now? Can you love now? So that's really my additional response to what it means to be a sphere of influence.
You know, I think where Sadhviji started this, as we are coming towards the closure of it, yes? So Sadhviji started with, and Tommy brought into the space about this sense of rage that is pervading in our world. And a lot of this rage is self-righteous, where you are being told what you need to do. Because I am doing that, it's like, you know, that's one of the things, a beautiful thing about India, Sadhviji. You have lived here forever now. And we all have been, I was born here. Probably Gurmukh has been here longer than me. To India? But one of the most beautiful things about India is the natural humility of this culture. You know, you see in India, this incredible sense of service and humility from morning to evening. They're just bowing. And you know, you go to the ancient temples, and the temple is huge inside. The sanctum is huge, and often the door to the temple is small. And that's a brilliant architecture, right? That to enter, you have to bow. And then you go up. You rise high. But you have to first surrender and bow. And when you serve, you do bhandaras in India. And at Parmarth, you know, almost every day is a bhandara. And I was with Swamiji and Sadhviji that other day where they were having, you know, you chant, and then when you're feeding the food to the people who have come there, you feel honored that you are serving them. You know, the whole teaching of our tradition is to become no one. And one of the things that Sadhviji is talking about was this thing from how I've seen in my personal experience, often the Western approach to it is that my father, when he went to America, when he came back and I asked him, so what did you think? He said, it's a hyperactive ego culture. Like everybody is so busy trying to be somebody. And that can happen within the yoga field also. That can happen in being vegan or vegetarian. Like I grew up vegetarian, but I've never been told by my guru or judged for drinking milk. Are you following me or not? And so if the world needs, we need to be compassionate and we need to be humble and we need to be kind, but we cannot change people from a place of aggression. We cannot change people by just pointing fingers. And that's one of the greatest teachings of India. That's one of the things that, the people who were attacking Sadhviji for just a humble invitation for unity. That, hey, how dare you not have an opinion about this thing? How dare you not demonize someone and point to what's wrong instead of pointing to what's right from a deep, humble place? And I think that's something which we can all learn from India. And that's something I would like to bring into this space. Is can we truly serve but be no one simultaneously? Where we don't need to feel that we need to have an opinion about everything. Because when we don't have an opinion about something, what we find is enough spaciousness starts to open. That we know that we need to have an opinion about everything. Where I need to like or dislike everything. There is an infinite spaciousness in my life where I can see clearly. Are you following me or not? And I think that's, growing up in India, that's one of the things which has moved me so much, and that's why I live in this land, and I love this land so much. Is because this incredible humility of the culture. And in India, there is a great saying, Adi Gagri Khalkat Jai, that the emptier the vessel, the more sound it makes. Right? The half-filled vessel makes the most sound. So you can be serving and you can be healing and helping the world without having to proclaim to the world what's going on. And I think that's one of the traps of social media, with people who feel, okay, as Sadhviji was saying, that just by attacking her or just by saying, hey, how dare you, I have done my job and I'm now part of the solution. And I think that's something we all individually and collectively really need to move beyond, that we don't get trapped into this spiritualized ego, where now just because we have spiritual opinions or more organic opinions, we shop organic and we eat vegan and we have mala beads and wear flip-flops and go to holiday in Bali and go to yoga retreats and all that bullshit, That somehow we are now the self-righteous brigade and we're going to police the world. That's one of the big issues with America. It's been trying to police the world, is the new Rome for the last 100 years or so. And it's time that we stop trying to police everybody, whether politically or on social media, and we really lead from a place of surrendered heart and humility, and make this world a kinder place, and make social media a kinder place, because social media is nothing but a projection of our own psyche. That's how disturbed we are, and that's how we are on social media. If we can create a kinder world within our own hearts, and we can just go out and serve and be nobody and nothing, just from Shunya, Shiva, who is the great void, he's just zero, and he serves from that place. We will make a much better world, I think. So, thank you, Sadhviji, thank you, Sean, thank you. And one of the great things, just one more thing, when Gurmukh said, I don't care what's going on, it's one of the most compassionate statements. Because when you don't care, you actually care. What it means by when she's saying not care is not like she's not truly caring. She cares truly of what she can do and what change she can make without getting caught up in just opinionating about the world, about pointing to what's wrong, this is wrong, and just having aggressive conversations around it. Just being of service and really being of positive change. As Sadhviji was saying, what's in front of you, whether it's just, here at Parmarth, this beautiful tradition where Muniji gives a Rudraksh sapling. Just even planting that, doing our job as a mother, raising healthy children, as a father, being a responsible father, doing your job, you are part of the solution. So we can all not care, but be deeply caring at the same time. Thank you.
So, please everybody decide right now. You'll stay. We want to hear from Gurmukhji and we want to hear final comments from Kiyaji. This is the time when sometimes people roll out. Let's stay till the end together and we'll pray together and then we'll go out and we'll have lunch together, okay?
I haven't anything to say except a ditto. Is that what you say? Ditto what Anand said.
I feel exactly the same way, Gurmukh-ji. It's been so beautifully communicated. I am just simply so grateful to be in this conversation because it can feel lonely out there when we are in our individual lives and we have all this social pressure to be responding in a certain way or to have certain opinions. It can be very isolating. So for me, the remembrance here is the importance of Sangha, of community, of having relevant conversations when they arise, not moving away from the conversation, but leaning into it as a way that we can continually reveal more solutions. Just like when you have an uncomfortable emotion arise with your partner, if you avoid it, it really becomes something. But if you can turn to them and have the conversation, it can dissipate and all that energy moves. So facilitating conversations, conscious conversations, lovingly with friends, with family, when invited or when there's an opening, seems like a good idea to me. That's a sphere of influence that we all share. So, thank you.
In closing, I wanted just quickly to share a personal story of a teaching that Puja Swamiji gave me when I first came here that feels like it embodies so much of that which has been spoken here today. There was a group of 10 or 11 schools in a big slum area outside of Delhi that had approached him because there were 10, 11 schools, kids were coming every day, teachers were coming every day, but the organization that ran it had run out of money. And schools had roofs that were leaking, they didn't have money to pay the teachers, et cetera, et cetera. So they came to Puja Swamiji to ask whether he would be prepared to sponsor it and adopt it. I had been here a few months, and he said, "Do you want to come and see these schools?" And I said, "Yes, of course." So we went and we spent the day going from one school to another, and they were quintessential what you would imagine in a movie about the slums, the worst slums of India. I don't need to paint the picture for you. I imagine that most of you can conjure that up in your mind. In many cases, it was even worse than that which you can conjure up in your mind. And we get back to our Delhi ashram at the end of the day, and I'm sobbing uncontrollably pretty much since we sat in the car from there to come back into Delhi. And it's dinner time, and I say, I can't eat, oh my God, these kids. And all I'm doing is just sobbing at the situation of these children in these slum areas, and they had nothing at all, and how can I possibly eat? And he said, eat a little something. I can't, my God, I'm crying. And he looks at me, and he says, are your tears helping those children? No, but oh my God, I can't. And he said, your tears are only benefiting your own ego. He said, you feel like a really compassionate person because look at how much you're crying. And look, you can't even eat dinner because you're so sad about those kids. This was pre-social media age. It was 27 years ago. If I had been online then, I'm sure I would have, had this urge, post something, and then I've done my part. And he said, if you really want to benefit the children, instead of just your own ego, eat dinner, go to sleep early, and get up tomorrow morning at 5 o'clock in the morning and figure out where you're going to raise the money to sponsor these 10, 11 schools. And I wanted just to share this as we conclude, because it feels to me like it brings in that element of being nothing. Hey, guess what? Not about me. These kids play it, not about me. Yes, it's about me as the spiritual me that is inseparable from them as one, but not about my psyche, not about my story, not about my drama, not about my outrage. It's actually about offering myself in that karma yoga that Sean spoke about. Offering myself as just an instrument in God's hands for whatever is meant to happen in all of the different spheres of influence. If we can just get our own stories out of the picture, get up early, commit to a practice, and be those nobody instruments together with this wisdom and guidance and love and teachings and blessings, I think we really can bring about a beautiful, beautiful shift. And I also just wanted to acknowledge Tommy for the beautiful, deep wisdom, heart wisdom and presence, and holding this space so, so beautifully today.
I want to thank each of you for claiming your space in this circle. This is a circle, an unbroken chain. Without you in it, it becomes a broken chain. With you in it, unbroken. We all sit shoulder to shoulder with each other. We walk this evolutionary path of humanity. We're so blessed. We're so blessed to have each other. It's an incredible honor for me to sit next to these people and be able to engage in this discussion. Thank you for being here also. Thank each of you so, so much. Love you so, so much. Love you so, so much. Sadhvi ji, would you take us out in a prayer?
Let's just close our eyes together for a brief moment. And as we inhale, let us feel that flow of Mother Ganga flowing into us. Breathing in that sacred, powerful freedom and liberation of her waters. And if you know this mantra, please chant it along with me. If you don't, just allow your heart to know it. And the mantra says, Om Asatoma Sadgamaya Tam Soma Jyotirgamaya Mrityorma Amritam Gamaya. O God, O divine presence, lead us from the falsehood of separation into the truth of our oneness. Lead us from the darkness of ignorance in which we suffer and bring suffering to others into the light of truth. Lead us from the identification as this physical, separate, individual body that is born, that changes, and that dies, into the true identification as the one soul, one spirit, one consciousness, one divinity that is never born, never changes, never perishes. Om Shanti, Shanti, Shanti. Om peace, peace.